The research questions that were looked at in this study were one, what is the level of nurses' teamwork attitudes? And this is in a specific Turkish training and research hospital. Number two is what is the level of conflict management strategies? Three, is there a significant relationship between teamwork attitudes and conflict management strategies? And then four, do socioeconomic and professional characteristics affect teamwork attitudes and conflict management strategies? And so this is I would say, functions a lot as a case study of this specific organization, although it can have greater implications across the nursing kind of industry. The methods of the study were the participants were 228 nurses in this Turkish training and research hospital. Data was collected through team steps, teamwork attitudes questionnaire, and the Rahim organizational inventory for cross-sectional, descriptive, and relational study. And the research found was from nurses working in internal surgical services and intensive care units in a southeastern part of Turkey with specific circumstances, making the results of this research limited to other nurses in other hospitals struggling with conflict management issues. And the results of this were that 91.2% of the nurses in the study were found to be in or have had workplace conflict. A lot of times the nurses that participated in these conflicts were either using these compromising or integrating methods of conflict resolution. And then the type of style generally was varied depending on education, gender, years of experience, and that those who experience workplace conflict were often in the same teams, which makes sense because you're in contact with them probably more than people that you're not in the same team with. And kind of the takeaways, some of the key findings of this were that teamwork attitudes and constructive conflict management strategies were the main findings that needed to be worked on with the participating nurses. And so establishing better teamwork and understanding a better team conflict management strategy personally and in this sort of interpersonal context were kind of the two main takeaways. And this indicated that these nurses had not received this sort of proper conflict management training to equip them with the skills to deal with workplace conflict. And it kind of pointed to greater leadership involvement in providing these trainings and guiding the nurses out of conflict. And so what this means is that the study illustrates that within the healthcare industry, and particularly within the nursing profession, workplace conflict is prevalent. And therefore, managers and head nurses need to hold workshops that teach their employees basic conflict resolution information. This training can include identifying one's own conflict style, understanding others' ways of dealing with conflict, and strategies on how to resolve workplace conflict. And so I think this really kind of touches on both aspects of our previous study too, looking at both conflict and crisis, and how nurses have to deal with both. I feel like people that are in crisis all of the time, and have to deal with conflict that arises from that crisis, whether it's among patients, whether it's among their coworkers. It's a very demanding and stressful job, and so there's an importance of teaching these conflict management strategies, maybe even crisis management strategies, in a way that can effectively help them and their patients and their teams. So that's what we have for this one.
It's just like, so on actually pretty much every day, particularly nurses that work in a hospital setting, they are having to communicate and deal with their team nurses, usually a nurse manager or a charge nurse that is, the person that is their next level supervisor. Then also the physicians, and then the technicians or those, CNAs that may also be doing like hands-on care, like, helping patients to be fed, cleaning them and that sort of thing. But then the patients themselves, as well as the families. And sometimes the needs of those people are in direct conflict with one another. And so the nurse is kind of that person in the middle. And having to learn to manage that conflict while providing care, that has got to be super challenging. And I don't know if they are trained while they're studying to be nurses and conflict management, but it would definitely be a benefit if they were, because like I said, just on a daily basis, they're having to communicate and work with all those different entities and to manage it. And then not to mention, what might be going on in their own lives, which, we all tend to carry some of that wherever we go.
Yeah, I feel like, power dynamics is coming to my mind with the nursing populations, just working with different doctors and kind of like the nursing aides. I forget the title of that. But all of the different power dynamics that they're navigating on a daily basis. And as sort of I feel like a nurse is like the front runner in a lot of the situations that bring someone to a doctor's office or a hospital, urgent care, all of the above. And while they are that front runner, they don't necessarily always have the autonomy or power over the decision making. And so I feel like that might be something difficult to navigate as well, leading to the conflict. And also just speaking of crises, right? The crisis that we're in right now with COVID and this global pandemic, nurses are, incredibly bombarded with new conflicts and crises to navigate on top of their usual. I was just talking to my friend who's a nurse practitioner, and another thing that's contributing to a lot of conflict within the office where she works is this great resignation that's occurring, and kind of her office is losing a lot of the receptionists and different personnel in the office that really they're an integral part. And so it's adding even more stressors onto nurses and that have to kind of navigate that change as well. So I feel like this is all leading back to, takeaways of training and equipping personnel in any workplace to, have courage and a skill set to a certain extent, right, to constructively navigating and managing conflict. Jeremy asked, what did she say is the reason for the great resignation in her office? That's really interesting too. We could talk about that for a while. I think that I've been talking to a lot of people about that. My nurse friend didn't know and was kind of asking. I was asking some questions like, what is the, what do you think the reason is? What was the workplace dynamic prior? Did you have a positive work environment? And I think and I don't know that this is something general. It could just be specifically to my friend's office. It used to be a privately ran doctor's office, and it was just recently kind of bought out by a larger public hospital, and that brought in new management, new HR, and they sort of, from what I heard, it wasn't really a constructive way to deal with a huge change like that, change in structures, change in team dynamics, and they kind of came in and cleaned house a bit and didn't really offer compassion or empathy and understanding to. I was given a story about coming in late, or where someone was using flex time, a receptionist, to allow this woman to get her son on a school bus, and they, it was an understanding that she had with the previous management, and it wasn't maybe it wasn't written out for this new HR company that was coming in. And so I think that had a lot to do with it. Yeah. So poor change management. Absolutely. But I think on a larger scale, it's some folks have been talking about this great resignation as in, oh, it's because they're making more money on unemployment and that's what COVID did. But I would really kind of be hesitant to go there as the reasoning that's the reason that's leading to this. A lot of people leaving their jobs. I don't think it has anything to do with unemployment or laziness or anything like that. I really think it has to do with reevaluating everyone's values and what work means to them. I think we're, you know, I'll speak for Americans in this country, like we're sort of reevaluating what work means to us. And so a lot of people are realizing, oh, I spent so much time and energy on my job and COVID and during quarantine, and being more closely around my family has made me realize that this is what matters most. And so they're reevaluating all these things that is contributing to people leaving their jobs that they maybe weren't very passionate about. And so now you're finding people that are really finding new. It's not that they're resigning to not work, they're resigning to find something that they're more passionate about. That's my take on it, but I'm not sure.